Willie Taggart is gone at Florida State. His tenure lasted just 21 games. He did not make it through the 2019 season as I anticipated he would. The Florida State support from alumni and other backers, boosters, has spoken. Yes, has spoken loudly in raising a reported $20 million to buy out Willie Taggart's contract, according to Mark Schlabach at ESPN. So, if you have money, if you have resources, if you have a fan base that is adamant about a decision, that is rabid, that has resources, then you can make decisions like this despite the buyout situation. So many of us had speculated that Willie Taggart would stay around Tallahassee a little bit longer than maybe he should because of the financial situation and trying to slim down that buyout, as obviously the money peels away as the years go by, that he would be able to make it skated through 2019 and then 2020, as I stated last night and the night before to a caller when they asked me the Willie Taggart situation and my estimation of what the administration would see. What I thought at the time would be finish out 2019, unless there was a colossal disaster. And to many Florida State fans, it's been a colossal disaster. But let's say they just really look shoddy against Boston College and Florida in particular, and then 2020 becomes the hot seat year. That was not the case. Willie Taggart fired today. Florida State Athletic Director David Coburn, in his statement, said, basically, we had no choice. Of course, they had a choice, and they made a decision that football is important at Florida State, and Willie Taggart has proven to not be capable of handling that job. So they made a choice, and they got the funding. They got the funding in place by the boosters, the alma mater, the alumni, and the supporters of Florida State football that gave them the resources, the backing, and the impetus, the power, the authority to make that choice that Willie Taggart should no longer be the coach at Florida State. All right. The interim coach is going to be for the final 3 games of 2019, which, of course, could turn into a postseason play for Florida State. They're 4-5 right now. The key game is going to be Boston College. If they can beat Boston College, then they put themselves at 5-5. They've got an FCS game against, I believe, Alabama State, and then Florida is most likely a loss, as it was 41-14 last year. So 6-6 is on the table right now for Florida State football. They reach postseason play. They get to practice with a pretty young team. The young players, bowl practice is crucial. It's important to set you up for 2020 and just the money that you can make, money that can be made by the conference, and just the additional exposure of playing a postseason game, regardless of the level of bowl game, how low it is. And it's going to be a low-tier bowl game for Florida State if they make it. So that's all that. All those games, those practices, everything's going to be under the guides of one interim, Odell Higgins, who's been in the program there at Florida State for quite some time. To look over Willie Taggart's tenure at Florida State, it ended in much the same way as it began. It started with a 24-3 loss to Virginia Tech. Now, Willie Taggart was hired at Florida State to, of course, win games, compete with Clemson, and win championships. That is the standard at Florida State and has been ever since Bobby Bowden created this monster back in the late 70s. Florida State last had a losing season before 2018 in 1976. That's how long it's been. There's all sorts of programs out there, the likes of Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama, who have had more recent losing seasons than Florida State up until 2018. Michigan had a few under Rich Rod and under Brady Hoke. Ohio State under John Cooper in 1988. Alabama in the early part of the 2000s a few times. Mike Shula and others. Mike Dubose. So even the Blue Bloods in college football in Texas, of course, a couple times under Charlie Strong had losing seasons, but not Florida State. Not Florida State, all the way going back to 1976 when Bobby Bowden took a program that was lightly regarded with all that talent playing in the state, still lightly regarded because the power brands in college football were dispersed differently back in 1976. There was really no Florida right then, although they had a Heisman Trophy winner a decade earlier, and Steve Spurrier. Florida football was not what it is now. Florida State was nothing close to what it is, and Miami was off the map. Bobby Bowden made Florida State football, and it's taken Willie Taggart to bring it down to not reaching postseason play, and that's a tough thing to do these days, not reach postseason play. There's 41 bowl games. There are 82 squads out of 130 in the FBS that reach postseason play. We see 5 and 7 teams making postseason play. Willie Taggart was capable and up to the task to do that. And I've been a little bit hard on Willie Taggart. That's obviously nothing personal here. He sounds like a fine young man. He sounds like a fine man in the task of leading young men. He sounds like a great guy, respectable of the job that he has outside of football in regards to leading young men and maturing them, making them productive citizens outside of football. I think he takes that very seriously, and he's a very smart man. And he may, again, lead a program effectively and successfully, again, as he did at South Florida and as he did at Western Kentucky. Therefore, I was a bit lukewarm on the hiring to begin with because of what he did at those two schools. You see 2-10 on his record early at both of those schools, and then you see where he left those programs at, I believe, 7-5 for Western Kentucky. Don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe 7-5 at Western Kentucky after 3 seasons, and then at South Florida turned them into a 10-2 group of 5 terror. Did Willie Taggart. He went to Oregon. I think that was a nondescript season. I don't think we can really evaluate what Willie Taggart did at Oregon. He was there for 1 year. They went 7-5. And based on what they were before he got there and what they've been since, that was pretty much what they were at that point. Mark Helfrich deteriorated the program from a national championship contender into what it was just prior to Willie Taggart leaving, 4-8. So Willie didn't necessarily upgrade them to 7-5. They had 7-5 kind of talent. Willie Taggart did a nice job at Western Kentucky and at South Florida, especially in raising those programs. Then he went to Oregon and pretty much turned in a B- to C+ effort because that football team achieved about what the talent on the roster would have said at the time at 7-5, maybe a little bit underachieved, but right about there. Then he comes to Florida State. And I said this just a few minutes ago, and we're getting a number of people on the line, 115 right now. We appreciate it. I'll hit the live chat in just a second and take your calls at 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. Is that, to me, Willie Taggart's tenure started the same way as it ended. 24-3 against Virginia Tech on that big opening night game in 2018. Labor Day night at home against a Virginia Tech team that we typically expect to be hard-nosed and complex defensively under Bud Foster. So after that game, there were concerns like, okay, Willie Taggart's, it's going to take some time for his offense to be implemented and to hit on all cylinders. And he went up against Bud Foster primetime, and they just weren't ready, and they'll be fine. He's got to implement his system. But here we are 21 games later, and of course, Kendall Bryles as a offensive coordinator hire, and go back to that 24-3 effort against Virginia Tech, and that Virginia Tech defense turned out to be the worst ever under Bud Foster, and they shut down Florida State to 3 points. They give up 52 to Pitt, but Florida State could only score 3 at home, and I have been asked so much about Willie Taggart and Florida State, and because of the live show that we do here each and every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on Florida State football, please join that, by the way. Florida State Seminoles live, 7 o'clock Eastern every Wednesday night. It may sound like I don't like Willie Taggart, but I was neutral on the hire. I rated him as a top half of the ACC head coach 2 years ago when he was hired, based on his past performance, of course, and what I expected. Then I ranked him was it 12th in the ACC this past offseason, and a lot of people took me to task when I rated people like Mac Brown and Scott Satterfield ahead of Willie Taggart and Dave Clawson, some excellent football coaches. So this team was unprepared every game last season. I've said this many times. They played decent 3 times in 12 games last year. They showed up against Boston College, a Boston College team that Florida State should always beat Boston College. They should win that game 9 out of 10 years. But at home, they slipped by Boston College, a 7-5 Boston College team, 22-21. They played their best game against Wake Forest, beating the Demon Deacons by 3 touchdowns. And the other game that they played a decent game was against Miami. And they blew it in the fourth quarter and played like garbage in the fourth quarter and made all sorts of mistakes and lost that game 28-27. So that's out of 12 games. And by the time we hit the end of the season, Willie Taggart's teams in 2019 was still having pre-snap penalties like crazy all over the place. And if you look at the Miami game, and I just watched every play of the Miami game, we saw the same Florida State team at the conclusion of 2019 after 21 games as we saw against Virginia Tech week 1 on offense. I'm speaking in particular week 1 of 2018. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's Reasonable Gump.
Hey, Reasonable Gump. What's up?
So I guess I'll just call in and give my take on this. So I'm not surprised by it at all. I think most people kind of saw it coming. Maybe not this early in the season, because it's not early in the season. But as far as for firing coaches go, it is relatively early. And a lot of people thought he would last another year. But I actually think this is the right move on Florida State. Yeah, that's a huge buyout, but that really is just that falls completely on the school for doing that. And this is something they're going to have to eat. Although with all the donors that they're getting, I don't think it's going to hurt them too much. But he should have never been offered that much money for doing basically nothing to earn it. So, regardless, I think this is a good decision on them, and I'll explain why. Florida State is in a position in the country. They're in a USC position. They're in a Georgia position or an LSU or Texas. They are located where they don't have to look very hard to fill their team with 85 scholarships easily. All right. They should not have to try very hard to get all the talent in the world on that team. There's no excuse why they should ever go below 8 or 9 wins a season. I realize that this wasn't always like this in Florida. None of the Florida schools really started to get relevant until more people moved down to that state in the late 80s. That's when you started seeing Miami and then the University of Florida and, of course, Florida State going on their 14-year streak of never leaving the top 5. That's when you really started seeing that. And that's basically the state of Florida hasn't changed. It's still truckloaded with so much talent down there. So to miss a bowl game, and it looks like they might miss another one this year if this continues, is just absolutely unacceptable. Florida State was in danger, and it actually still is, because we don't know who their next coach is going to be. But right now, so they are in danger of becoming the next Tennessee. They are, and that fate is drastically approaching them, or quickly approaching them right now. They had to make a change, because you don't want to be the next Tennessee. You don't want to look back and realize what you used to be. You used to be one of the winningest programs in college football, I guess technically still are. In Florida State's case, had the longest running streak of never missing a bowl game. That now belongs to Georgia, thanks to Willie Taggart. You don't want to look back and see all those years of either competing for national titles or at least winning your conference titles, and then look at what you got now, and you are struggling to make a bowl game perennially. All right? Because once you hit that point, it takes a long time and, to be honest, some luck to climb out of that. Tennessee made some really bad hires, and it's going to take them more years to get back to where they can compete for the East. They're not doing it this year. They're not going to do it next year. I don't care how optimistic you are. If you're realistic, you know that Tennessee is not going to win a national title in the next 5 years. And Florida State was staring down that barrel. That's my take on it. I think they made the right choice. It's a painful choice, but it's one they did to themselves. They shouldn't have given this guy that much money to begin with, but they're just going to eat that, move on, and this time go out and make a real coaching hire.
So to respond to Wayne Tillman, whose comments on the screen right now, it says, should make you happy, Mark. You never cared for him. I am here to evaluate football. That's all I do. I just evaluate the teams, the coaches, the players, and I try to do it in a respectful and kind way. But obviously, they're out there competing on a big stage, so we have to be critical because people win the games and they lose the games. And when you lose them over and over and over with top 15 talent and you play like the 70th best team in the country with top 15 talent, then, I'm going to be somewhat critical of you. I'm not happy that a particular gentleman lost his job because he seems like a first-class individual, and I've always stated that. He's doing a poor job at Florida State. He did a poor job. They could have given him a little bit more time, but I highly doubt that would have mattered at Florida State. Now, to get to your comments, certainly it crossed my mind as well, making the Tennessee-Florida State comparison. Tennessee, though, was working on how many bad hires at this point? If you consider Jeremy Pruitt, the jury's still out for me on Jeremy Pruitt, but he is how many hires away from Philip Fulmer? It's Derek Dooley, it's Lane Kiffin, it's Butch Jones. And am I missing anybody in there? I don't believe so. So we're talking 3 to 4 hires, bad hires by Tennessee football, and we're talking about 12 years since they've been any good. I know Butch Jones had them at 9-4 a couple times, but basically sustainable good since Philip Fulmer was fired. And obviously his last year was not great, and that's what got him fired. So it's been 06-07 since Tennessee was any good. So I don't think they're quite there. Plus they have the advantage of playing in the ACC. They have the disadvantage of staring at the monster in front of them in Clemson, what's become the monster that it's interesting to me that these programs have switched places in the span of about 6 years, 5 to 6 years. And for about 2 to 3 in the middle, we're right there neck and neck. And now Clemson has just obviously raced by them. And Florida State is concerned with the likes of Boston College and NC State and Wake Forest. But the next coach can certainly make up ground if he's competent much easier than a Jeremy Pruitt and the schedule that they have to face at Tennessee in terms of looking good and posting a reasonable record, an 8-4 type season on a regular basis.
Well, that's really just another data point against Willie Taggart right now is they're not Tennessee. They don't have to deal with the SEC. They don't have to. Tennessee has to deal with Alabama every year. Florida State doesn't. Do they play Clemson every year? Yeah, they do.
Yes.
So they have to deal with Clemson every year, but the rest of the AC is just so bad that you should be able to win 6 games without a coach. And I'm not saying Florida State won't win 6 games. I mean, looking at their schedule right now, Boston College and Alabama State should both be enough to be able to win 6 games, and then they'll get killed by Florida at the end of the year. But when I made the Tennessee comparison, I meant like Willie Taggart right now is unless they make a change, which they just did, they were approaching the Derek Dooley time frame of Tennessee, which was literally only 2 years after Fulmer left. I know he was the second coach, but I mean, come on, the Lane Kiffin situation was so unique. He left himself after 1 year. You can't really, as much as I love to clown Tennessee, I can't really hold that one against them. But you were looking at becoming the beginning of what Tennessee has had to go through. 3 years, I think, of Derek Dooley, 5 years of Butch Jones. I understand one of those is pretty good, but it's still bittersweet because when you look, that particular year that you referenced,
Two.
they actually had control of the East, and then they blew it by losing to South Carolina and Vanderbilt at the end of the year. So it's not, no Tennessee fan remembers that year fondly, trust me. That was just slightly less crappier than the other years surrounded by. So I think Florida State was fastly approaching having to deal with that for the next decade, because this affects recruiting. Even in a state like Florida, players are going to be looking around saying, well, you got Florida over here who's competitive with Georgia. You have, honestly, Georgia right up there. They wouldn't mind having you. You got Alabama not that far away. And then you got the teams that can reach across the country like Ohio State or even LSU. Of course, they don't really have to reach anywhere. Hell, even, at this point, even Tennessee. You're going to see these programs that you think these players will, or if you're a player, you'll be like, you know what, this is a good school where I would be able to show off a little bit of my talent, maybe build myself a good resume. It's a lot harder to do that at a school that is not even competitive, really, in their own conference. And so I think the academic director of Florida State, I'm sure it wasn't a single decision, but anyway, whoever was involved in this, it finally saw that coming. They saw what was going to happen if this continues. And to make one more point, I actually thought about this earlier than the year. You have to also think and decide whether or not Florida State is a training school for head coaches. What I mean by that is this a school where you don't mind having an early head coach come in and kind of test the waters and see what kind of style he is, and basically probably reel off a losing season here and there, maybe get some 7 wins, maybe an 8-win season here or there. By the way, that's pretty much what Derek Dooley was to Tennessee, to make that comparison again. Are you a training school or are you an elite program? Because an elite program does not have the patience for that. Elite programs need you to be a head coach. You need to come in and you need to be winning 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games a year. Alabama was dealing with that from 2000 up until higher. And you'll notice that they rinsed and repeated pretty quickly. They didn't get very much time at all because they knew that Alabama's a historic program. They have no patience for anyone who goes 3-9 like they did in 2000. And so I think Florida State decided, you know what, even a 6-win season, that's not good enough. If Florida State in the ACC, where you're surrounded by recruits in your backyard, I'm sorry. We don't expect you to beat Clemson every year. We don't even expect you to beat them most years. But we expect you to be able to win 9 games in the ACC.
Okay, Reasonable Gump. I'm going to let some other folks get on here. I'm getting all sorts of calls in. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sorry, man.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline.
All right. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
NT8, baby.
There he is. How are you?
I just got to throw in, I want to welcome you to the Coach Circus for college football.
It has started.
Keanu to Rutgers. Fire Frost now. Hire somebody else. Fire the Florida State coach. Fire USC. Hire Urban. Now, Urban may take the FSU. His wife is more interested in being hired at Notre Dame, which is, who is that? Brian Kelly?
Brian Kelly.
Dropping for, yeah. I mean, I'm just totally glad that I'm sending you anything that I'm finding via tweet, because welcome to the college circus. So that's all I wanted to jump in there and get it out. So let you cover it.
Well, it certainly turns into one just about every year, but it's typically the Sunday. It's on a Sunday, but it's going to be in about 4 Sundays. The Sunday after the regular season's over even before the conference championship games is when we typically see the axe fall about 10 or 12 times across the country. And then that spurs on all the coaching impact on about 20 or 25 jobs. Because if you think about it, if the axe comes down on 10 coaches and then 10 other guys leave other jobs to go take those, and then it just opens up from there and it becomes a domino effect. So we will do our best to cover it. And cover the speculation leading into it. A lot of interesting names out there being bantied about to replace Willie. All right, Navy Thomas, anything else?
I just wanted to fire you the subjects that were popping up all over the place over the years. So
I hear you.
My friend, I'll go back to listen and watching. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Tom. Have a good one. Our man, Navy Thomas, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Appreciate it. 336 on the line. Thank you so much. The super chat is on if you'd like to donate. Like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. I got to get that in. Like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. If you love college football, even if you don't agree with me, if you love what we do on a regular basis here, by just discussion, debate, and analysis all the time, bringing on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation. That's what we do. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McGee Sports Sport. How are you doing?
There he is. How you feeling today, sir?
I'm actually feeling a lot better.
All right.
I thought I had calling in sick this afternoon, but I ended up going out there and working, so that was good. I'm feeling much better. Basically, just want to give my 2 cents on this. As I saw the news kind of later than everyone else did because I was out working. My opinion is the following. I told you yesterday they should fire him, and they did. It's good for Florida State, and I hope they hire some. I think they need to get a name. I know this might be kind of unpopular. I said go down to FAU and get Lane Kiffin. That's what I think they should do. Florida State, all the Florida schools in general, they don't really care about the rules that much, about like proper etiquette and all that. So I say go down and get Lane Kiffin, and hopefully he could do something. What do you think about that?
Lane Kiffin. I think that there are going to be much more solid, stable coaches that we know have exceptional reputations and credentials, like Bob Stoops, Matt Campbell, James Franklin, and the like out there, just off the top of my head, that come to mind. Matt Wells, possibly, that might be in line for this job.
I agree with you, but I don't think I don't think James Franklin's leaving Penn State. I don't think Bob Stoops is leaving Kentucky, and I don't think Matt Campbell's leaving Iowa State. That's what I don't think. The only coach I could see possibly leaving is the guy up in Washington State, Mike Leach. But I don't know if Mike Leach wants the Florida State job. I know he wanted the Tennessee job, but I don't know if he wants the Florida State job.
I don't know who wants what job, because coaches don't talk like that. Every coach that's employed right now wants that job publicly. They say, this is my job. I love this job. This is my destination job. They all talk like that. So I don't know who wants the job either. I just know what coaches are either on a hot seat somewhere else, who are typically not that attractive because they're not doing the job at the place where they currently reside. But more than that, the guys that are coming up the ranks and showing us something by coming up the ranks. Josh Heupel, Matt Campbell at Iowa State, guys that are doing the job and tearing it up where they are at a slightly lower level or lower prestige job.
The first guy brought up, that's the guy at UCF, right?
Yeah, Josh Heupel at UCF.
I wouldn't hire him. I think he got handed the keys by Scott Frost.
Yeah, I would need to see more out of him to see if he's able to sustain that. I would tend to agree that. I'm not saying that he's not a good coach. I'm just saying I don't have a track record. He just didn't screw up what was given him. That's all we know right now.
But overall, it's going to be interesting to see who they hire. I don't know who got the interim tag. I'm assuming it's Riles. He got the interim tag, and we'll see who they hire. Two other quick notes. Mark is only at 52 likes with 367 people watching, so let's get the likes up for him. And thanks for taking my call, Mark, and go Terps.
Thanks, McD. Appreciate it, man. Our man McD Sports. I love listening to his takes on Maryland, by the way. I know we're talking Willie Taggart. One quick note on Butch Jones, and this is not about Butch Jones, but Butch Jones, yes, it ended horribly for him in the same way that Brett Bielema seemed to have the program on the right trajectory. Bielema at Arkansas, and then he just had like a bad 4 or 5 games and all of a sudden gone. And the same thing happened to Butch Jones. Butch Jones took it over, had a bad season, getting himself set, then 9-4, 9-4. And the 2 9-4 seasons were very, 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 very excruciatingly close, especially the one to being 12-0 and going to an SEC championship game. But it was a bad half a season for Brett Bielema. When you think about what happened to Brett Bielema, he took over an awful program that was trashed by Bobby Petrino, and then who was in between? Or was it straight Petrino it was 2013, straight Petrino into Bielema? And I think we forget how good Arkansas was under Bobby Petrino. They finished in the top 10 in America his last 2 seasons there, his last 2 full seasons there. Anyway, Bielema takes it over, reconstructs the offense, the program. They have a rough 3-9, but then here they come. 7-6, 8-5, and they're moving along, and they're off to a good start the one season, and they look like they're advancing. They're starting to beat some better teams in the SEC, and then all of a sudden, they fell off a cliff against a couple teams late in the year, Missouri, and lost a bowl game to Virginia Tech. Then the next season, boom, they tank and he's gone. Just very odd the way things can swing in the matter of a couple games that get your program off kilter if it's not established. Again, look it up. I chronicled it. I'm sure I did. I know I did. And I had the numbers and the scores and the sequence of the games and the situation a little bit more off the top of my head concerning Bielema a few years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, and Butch Jones right around the same time. It was just eerie the way they were building both programs and having marked, decided success in the right direction. Then all of a sudden, just a few games catapulted the program down. Wrong word there, Mark. Caused the train to go off the rails. We'll go with that analogy. Yes, J Jobs, like the video, thumbs up. We appreciate everybody being on the line. We're talking Willie Taggart. We've talked a lot about his tenure there at Florida State and what the offense in particular has looked like, what the team has looked like, which for me has been unprepared and just unmotivated, undisciplined. Usually over the course of a small period of time, the team will take on the personality and the tendencies and the character of the coach. Nick Saban's teams, poised, disciplined, come through in the clutch, attention to detail. Attention to detail. Watch Florida State play. No attention to detail. No attention to detail. They had a couple series and sequences against Syracuse in 2018, playing a team that was a good team that played above its head, finished 9-3 in the regular season, but still, this is Florida State talent, top 15 talent, playing at Syracuse against top 60 talent, and there were sequences of series that were incredible. Guys consistently false start, too many men on the field, not enough men on the field, wrong formation, illegal formation, over and over and over. I said off the top of our live stream here, the Virginia Tech effort with 3 points against a bad defense in week 1, game 1 under Willie Taggart. The Willie Taggart era started with 3 points against Virginia Tech on a national stage at home against an awful, worst ever Bud Foster defense, ended in much the same way 21 games later against Miami and scoring all of 10 points. Good Miami defense, but still scoring 10 points against Miami and posting 203 yards of total offense. This is 2019. Yes. 203 yards of total offense, 9 sacks, 10 penalties. And that Cam Akers led offense, the wild cam, wild cam. What's that? It's you don't run that like play after play, series after series after series. What can he do? He can only do so much. He threw a little pop pass that was pretty effective. Yeah, you do that a couple times. You don't have a running back. You know that the offense is lost when you're running that for a span of 4 or 5 series. Most of the time, you're putting a running back in a shotgun to run an offense. Do you think that's predictable? Is that predictable? Yeah, it might be. Might be predictable. I think I could be a defensive coordinator against an offense that had a running back, albeit one of the best in the nation, but a running back running the offense. He's not throwing the ball more than 4 yards. I know that. Unless they run some kind of crazy trick play and the guy's streaking down the field wide open. We see that. It's called a halfback option play. But on a play-to-play basis, there's no threat there. 860-325-3687. I thank you for 393 on the line. Keep in mind that the super chat is available for you. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And of course, I am going to cut a video at some point. I keep saying this, giving you all the ways in which you can help us build the channel here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I am also in the midst of receiving the news about Willie Taggart, watching the NFL Red Zone. So this interrupted my NFL Red Zone time. And in constructing the top 25 that actually makes sense, which will be out. I guess we're going to have to go with early tomorrow morning because I got to go to work. But I was in the midst actually of watching Florida State and Miami play and constructing my analysis on that game since I favored Georgia, Florida at 3:30 Eastern time on Saturday. I was getting back to the Florida State Miami when I saw the alert, Willie Taggart gone. So he interrupted my analysis of Florida State Miami, so I didn't get the chance to really tear apart Florida State's ineptitude on offense against Miami before I got the news about Willie Taggart. My top 25 that actually makes sense is coming out. Also, keep in mind that over on SG1 Sports, tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern time, I get a live stream over there as well. And we're going to have previews of Week 11 like you would not imagine. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Brian Rockwell calling, my man.
Hey, Brian, how are you? What's up?
I want your thoughts, and bear with me. I'm not going to keep you long.
Okay.
Why in the world would FSU want to take on a buyout from Oregon in addition to taking care of the buyout that he got from when he was, coaching at that other school that he was coaching at before he went to Oregon? And I'm trying for the life of me to remember what the name of that school was that he was coaching at before he went to Oregon.
South Florida.
South Florida. I mean, that is nuts.
Are you a Florida State fan?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Not at all. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to call and get your thoughts. I mean, the not only having to buy out his Florida State contract and the Oregon contract, the buyout from over to get him from Oregon, but then you see on Twitter that they're also on the hook for the South Florida contract that that Oregon was going to do the buyout for when he went there, and that is crazy money.
They're desperate to fix the football program. And I don't know what the distribution of money is in regards to what's coming from the Florida State administration and the school itself versus what they were able to raise and what was handed to them. So obviously it was substantial enough for them to do it.
In your memory, Mark.
Yep.
I mean, the buyout amounts on this level. I mean, this is just another level that is just.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Absolutely. And if somebody knows
So,
and
anyway,
can substantiate that on the live chat, I would love to remember when that happened. I don't think we've come anywhere close to approaching, I would say, in the 10 to 13 range. And I'm not coming up with that situation, but that is the high end of the buyout range that we've seen.
But anyways, my man, love the show. You're great on Twitter. You're the man. I just wanted to call in, get your thoughts on that. And that was all, man. I'm going to let you go. Peace.
I appreciate it so much. Have a good day. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and with 379 on the line, I hate to do it, but I got to pull the plug. And this is one of the reasons why I ask you all the time, please help me with revenue streams all over the place. I'm trying to create so many. I'm on Patreon, in which, what do we have on Patreon right now? What we have are my weekly predictions. Is that enough to get you over there? Apparently not, and I understand why. But what we are doing is building a community over there, and there is an offer out there that I have each week to do an exclusive live stream with you because I still have to go to another job. But the goal, the vision is to do this all the time. And you can't imagine, for those of you who are so kind in your encouragement and words to say, man, Mark, you're knocking it out of the park. You're doing all this content. You are providing all this. Can you imagine if I had 50 more hours in my week? All right. So if you have a comment on Willie Taggart, and I hope I didn't miss too many good ones because I'm back at, so understand when I pull the comments off the live stream and put them on the air that I'm not going to keep up with all of them, number one. So I apologize for that. Also understand that if I get to a certain point in the live stream and I can't go back and grab other ones, the application will not allow me to do that. So that's something I explain from time to time for people that get mad and upset because I don't grab their comment or they think that I'm dodging them or something. I'm not dodging anybody. Somebody made a comment in regards to the possible racism of letting Willie Taggart go this early, and then made another comment that I was dodging that subject. I'm not approaching that subject because I don't have any valid comment or opinion to make. When people make comments like that black coaches are unfairly let go earlier than white coaches, if you make that claim, you better be ready to back it up with facts and be able to show. And that would take a whole lot of evidence because every situation's different. As our last caller just pointed out, this is unprecedented to be buying out a contract at $20 million that goes back to 2 other jobs. So every situation's different. Every motivation for every school is different. Every level of expectation is different at every school in regards to what they're going to put up with. John Cooper got fired after an 8-3 regular season at Ohio State because they want to win championships. It depends on the job. It depends on the situation, depends on the money, depends on who might be available, depends on who's pulling the trigger and what kind of power brokers are outside of the administration pushing and putting pressure on those guys that say, get this guy out. We want to win football games and we want to win championships. And I am pissed off because my alma mater looks like garbage. Every situation's different. So understand that. So anytime you go to race as a reason why something is done, I would just ask that you would please consider the facts and consider the situation and consider reality. I have no idea if that had anything to do with it. It doesn't appear to. The guy took top 15 talent and played like garbage, played like a top 75 team, took a missed extra point against Louisiana Monroe to beat them 45-44. Lost to all sorts of teams he shouldn't have lost to. Struggled to get by teams. They played a 2-10, 0-8 in the ACC Louisville team last year, and they needed a fumble. They needed Louisville to hand them the game to win. They played like garbage. Were they making a little bit of progress this year? Yeah, they played Wake Forest pretty good. They played NC State, but NC State's awful. They beat NC State by 15 or 20 points. They beat Louisville by 10 or 12 points. Yay. great. Willie Taggart didn't get the job done. He had 21 games. Out of the kindness of my heart, or just the way I tried to give the benefit of the doubt generally in life, I was thinking that they would, and I probably would have let him coach the rest of this season and then said, Willie, 2020, there's going to be criteria that you go generally 8-4. Now, it wouldn't be just 8-4 is all there is to it, but I need to see substantial progress. And all these failures that he has in the ACC, 6-9 in the ACC, 6-11 against Power 5 teams over these 2 years, 6-11 against the Power 5. So, wow, he went 3-1 against non-Power 5 teams, lost to Boise State, of course, this year. So 6-11 against the Power 5. 6-9 against an awful ACC, against the worst conference in America in the Power 5. 6-9. And I'm sorry I can't take your call. I've got a job to do that doesn't involve necessarily college football, but involves media and television. So I got to get to my job. Thank you so much, Groon D. I just saw it come down over here. So, folks, just for people that criticize what I can bring and what I can't put on the screen and all this stuff. So I'm looking at YouTube right now, but typically I'm looking at stats and records and box scores and trying to educate myself while I'm talking. And I've got an application here that I take from StreamYard. And so I can't see, just believe me, it's involved. And I try to get all the capable quality comments and the funny comments and everything on the screen as much as possible. But Groon, thank you so much for the contribution. I appreciate it. Whoever just called last, we're going to blow it out on Florida State football Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Also have a live stream on SG1 Sports tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to take your calls. I'm going to talk college football. And Tehran, I hope I got your name correct. Butch, build the greatest college football team ever assembled. It doesn't take a year and a half. Sorry. Hey, FSU, Al Golden is available. Tehran, thank you so much for the comment. If I could find it here, and again, that's the other problem is it's difficult. I can see it on YouTube, but it's difficult to find here on, there we go. Boom. Want to give him some credit and recognition. Thank you so much for the contribution. And also, Groon, where are you? Who says Helton is next? Maybe he is. We just had a conversation with SB Nation about Clay Helton. He said after the Oregon game, I'm the right guy, I'm the right fit, I'm the right man for the job. He came in 2015. I could certainly make a case for Clay Helton doing some good things at USC, but he is not USC caliber. Clay Helton is maybe Kansas State caliber. He's not USC caliber. All right, thank you so much for jumping on here. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Stay tuned for my top 25 that actually makes sense. I'm going to evaluate Florida State and Miami's game. SG1 Live tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern time. And, of course, previews all over the places. We get you set for Wisconsin, Iowa. Who else is playing next week? Oh, there is a game in Tuscaloosa. Yeah, Alabama, LSU, Penn State, Minnesota, and a whole lot of other really good games this week. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. We'll see you soon. Follow me on Twitter, Mark Rogers TV. Facebook, give me a like, Mark Rogers TV. Thank you so much.